Hi, my friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Forte Catholic. We are so glad that you are here. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you kind of know how it goes. We have 3 segments, about 20 minutes each, which leaves us to right around an hour's long worth of a show. Well, Kathryn and I, who is our co-host today, sat down and we planned a normal 3-segment show. In our first segment, we were going to talk about the new Johnny football documentary. Kathryn's a big Texas A&M fan. I'm not a fan of Johnny. So her and I have 2 very different opinions about Johnny football. And we end up milking that entire conversation. We have 1 segment today, guys. This is the rarest occurrence in Forte Catholic land. We have 1 segment today because we talk about Johnny football. We talk about how making mistakes, yes, you deserve to be forgiven, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be forgotten. There might still be consequences for our actions. We talk about tribalism and rooting for people and how sports, a lot of times, we root against people and how maybe we shouldn't be doing that in our faith. It's a very, very good conversation. Kathryn and I kind of start on very different positions and come to some sort of an agreement by the end. We hope that you enjoy this fun conversation about football, about forgiveness, about Texas, about all sorts of things. Please enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. That is Kathryn Whitaker. Hello, Kathryn.
You didn't do your normal what's up.
I didn't.
It took me a minute. I was like, are we starting the podcast?
Yeah, it's thrown everybody off. We've been doing it for the last couple episodes. Thanks for listening. I appreciate that. You wouldn't have been surprised if you were a listener of the
it's been
podcast that
busy
you're on.
here, Taylor. Been busy. I got some kids going places.
You do. We talked about the preparations for dropping all of your kids off in different places and starting high school and starting college and all this kind of stuff. And then so it was very fun to watch. We did the episode and you were all positive about it. Like I gained a ton of like people, like the avatar of you that follows you, like a bunch of your age moms now follow me because of our last episode. It makes me very happy. I think they'll probably unfollow pretty soon if they haven't already because of the rest of the content that I share. But they loved you and they loved hearing you talk about your kids going back. And you talked about it so positively. So it was a little bit fun for me to watch, like on your Instagram stories, you dropping off those kids and just falling apart because you were like, this is going to be great. And then every video is just like, oh, my babies.
The joy is still there. It's just hard. It is hard to let your kids go. Anybody that tells you that it's not is a big fat liar.
I am. This sounds like a weird tangent, but I'm currently listening to a book called Talking to Strangers by Malcolm
that's
Gladwell.
A great book. Super good. Love that book.
I'm in the chapter right now that's talking about how we all read facial expressions differently. Like if I did a mad face, you would know that I was mad, but like somebody from a different culture in a different country might think that I was happy. You know what I mean? So you keep saying you're happy, but in every video you're crying. So you might say you're joyful. It's just hard to read the joy on your face in those moments.
So you can be happy and sad in the same moment. And I didn't know what that felt like until I had sent my kids out the door. So
Allison,
it comes.
Not Allison. You're Kathryn.
I'm Kathryn.
I just learned over the last 5 years that I have more emotions than just happy or angry. And I now have like 48 emotions, but I haven't figured out how to have them at the same time. So this is a whole new ball game that you're trying to bring me into.
Well, I didn't know that you could have them at the same time either. And then when our first one left, that's when I knew what it felt like to have your heart crushed and to burst with pride at the same time. And it comes out in tears. I mean, there's maybe for some other people they laugh. I don't know, but for me, I cry. My kids are like, "Oh, here it comes," and when I'm like, "I'm so proud of you," like as I'm hugging them, it's just. But they know that it's any parent, if you've loved someone and sent them out the door onto a new season of life, you know what I'm talking about, and it's a weird thing to hold both. It's almost like when someone passes away and there is the gratitude of having had them and the sadness of never seeing them again, and they happen at the same time. There's few moments in life, I think, when you have both, and sending my kids out the door, I had both. Sorry it came across as tears. I promise I was happy.
I never
Just not
heard a
all
comparison of
happy.
dropping your kids off at school as them dying before. I hope they listen to this. You're dead to me.
We used to say that we were going to break their plates. Like when my kids were little, my dad used to joke that when we were going to leave the house, he said, well, I'm going to break your plate, which basically meant you can come back, but you can't stay because we don't have a plate for you. So when my kids were younger, they started hearing us say this, and they got in middle school, and one of my kids looked at me and he said, Mom, are you really going to break my plate? And I said, no, it's like a figure of speech. They were worried. I think it was my boys. They were worried that there was going to be nothing for them to eat. And I said, no, you're good.
Well, I have many solutions to this problem. One, I know your boys well enough to know that they don't need plates to eat.
No,
I've been at your
they do
house while
not.
your boys they didn't have plates. Also, like your boys know, but I think like I've been to your house twice, and like it's a nice house in a nice place in Austin. I assume you have more plates than the amount of people in the house. Like breaking one plate does not mean there's not a plate for you. It's a symbol.
Well, we do have the color coding system at our house, and everyone has a different color. So I think they just were thinking, no one's eating here. And I'm like, you're going to be fine. You can come back and visit. You just can't stay forever. As much as I want you to, you cannot do that. You have to go live your life.
I like that your kids are smart enough to go to college and dumb enough to believe that you're going to break a plate when they left. That's very.
I like
funny
that dichotomy too. It's really good.
So speaking of dichotomies, you brought them up. You know that you can be happy and sad in one moment. I have a dichotomy for you. I feel like you and I have we've taken the next step in our friendship. So I feel like I'm allowed to do this. So last month when you were on the show, you provided us with one of the greatest moments in Forte Catholic history. The show's been going for almost 8 years, and you gave us an incredible moment where you're an Aggie fan. We established this. You're a very big Aggie fan, but you're not the biggest like sports fan of everything. Like you might watch stuff, but you don't know things like I do. Like I'm an avid sports fan. And
I will not disagree with you.
You don't think I'm an avid sports fan?
No. I said I will not disagree with you in the sense that I know football, but I'm not so well versed on like hockey and other sports like that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, no one cares about hockey. It's not a real sport anyway. But we were talking about you, the non-sports person, was talking to the sports person about a Las Vegas sports team, and you kept guessing names that the sports fan, you made me look dumb because I had no idea what you were talking about. So I just started listing off Las Vegas teams. It was this very, very funny moment. But you know, and like people loved it. We shared the clip of it, and that's where I got a lot of those new followers that I got about, you know, the moms that all love you, and they were like, "Oh, here's this person." Like one time, they kept sharing that video of you talking, and then I would respond and be like, "Hey, that guy looks familiar," and they're like, "I don't know who he is." I'm like, "It's me."
It's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Yeah, I am the problem. That's for sure. And they blocked me, but. You and I have been messaging about it too, because it was just a very funny moment and a very you moment. So the dichotomy in me is that I wanted to bring it up again, you know, your mistake that you made a month ago. But I'm a mean enough person to bring that up, but I'm also a nice enough person to let you have some redemption. You actually brought a sports topic to the show today that I'm excited to talk about, because speaking of dichotomies, we have two varying positions on what you would like to talk about. So set it up for us. What would you like to start today's show with?
Well, I feel like we need to give people some background in that. If you love college football and you've been watching it for a while, when I say this name, you will be like, oh. So Johnny Football got his start at
That's
Tommy High.
his government name. Yeah, Johnny Football.
Yeah, Johnny Manziel got dubbed Johnny Football after he played at A&M. And so he played at Tommy High. He was at Kerrville, which is a few hours away from Austin. A really dynamic, amazing football player. He's a quarterback. And so he came to A&M. And when he started for A&M was the year that we entered the SEC. And so everyone thought that the Aggies it was going to be horrible, that we were going to get it handed to us, and that we were never going to be able to compete in the SEC. In fact, Texas made so much fun of us.
It wasn't true that year, but it has been true the last few years.
Okay, focus. I'm telling the story here, Taylor. So Texas gave us such a hard time, and it's another story for another topic, but now they're like, oh, now we want to join the SEC, and they are. But whatever. No one thought we were going to do well, bottom line. And we have this quarterback. Our quarterback coach at the time was Cliff Kingsbury, who went on to coach for Tech and then other places. But he was
He went
Johnny's
on to get
coach.
fired from Tech and
Yeah,
fired
he
from the
did.
Arizona
I
Cardinals.
know,
Yeah,
and he was the former quarterback at Tech. I know. I feel bad for Cliff, but whatever. I don't feel too bad for him. He's going to end up being okay. But the thing was with Johnny is that he had this amazing season. First couple of games, they kind of tamped it down and didn't let him really play the football that he's used to and that he's really good at. And finally, they just let him loose. And when they did, we went on this huge run and we beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, which nobody thought we were going to do. But you have to remember, so this was in 2013. Yes, the Aggies entered the SEC in 2013. So he is sort of at the advent of social media when Twitter's taking off and all these sorts of things are taking off. And so he's not old. And I don't know too many 19-year-old boys. I've had two that make excellent decisions when they're not teen. And Johnny made a series of bad choices. And the long and short story
that's
of
the
it is
nicest way to put his off-field problems.
listen,
I've ever
he
heard.
did. He did. And I'm not excusing any of those. And I think so this documentary came out kind of talking about the untold story of Johnny Manziel.
Yeah,
And
it just
so
came out. So we're talking about something that
Yeah.
happened many years ago, but the reason that it's in everybody, like it's in the ethosphere right
Everybody's
now,
talking about
is
it.
because the documentary just came out a few weeks ago.
So, I mean, I have a love for the Aggies. So it was really exciting to see the Aggies finally take care of business, like win the game that nobody thought they were going to win and do it week after week and have this player who brings excitement. I mean, it was an amazing season. You have to remember, Taylor, like my boys were crying themselves to sleep almost every Aggie football game because they're like, they lost again. And I'm like, I feel you, man. I've been an Aggie fan for a long time. We've been watching this play out. So to have someone come into Kyle Field and bring this excitement, not just to football, but to the university, because if you talk to any Aggie, we are big fans of our university. So to have the rest of the world start to recognize, hey, this might be a pretty amazing place. It was a really magical time in College Station. And then a lot of choices, a lot of life happened, and Johnny's life really spiraled out of control. The documentary, I mean, I think I knew some of that, Taylor, but it wasn't until I watched the whole documentary that I was struck by how low Johnny went, like as low as you can go. And I have always been a Johnny fan because I always wanted to believe that he'd get it together. And I say that because the year that he won the Heisman as a freshman, which is never happened before. He was the first one to do that. And when he came to the state legislature to be recognized at the state house, they recognized it was like Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football Day. My son, my oldest son, who's now 22, was a page that day. And so he happened to be on the floor when Johnny was there. And he got his photo taken with Johnny, and Johnny signed his little badge. And it was this huge moment for Will. And I wrote about it on my blog. I was like, people need to know this was a really cool thing. And I hammered it out, Taylor, in like maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I hammered this post out, an open letter to Johnny Football. Well, I didn't think much about it. I wrote it, went to bed, woke up the next morning, and someone had posted it on TexAgs, which is like a sports kind of portal where if you love Aggie athletics, you go there to talk about all the things. And then it got put on Reddit, and my site crashed because hundreds of thousands of people were reading this letter. And Johnny tweeted it out. Like he said, it's moments like this that make me, grateful for what I do. And
I totally
everything.
forgot about this. Like I totally forgot. Like the whole time you and I were talking about this topic, I was like, oh, like because I didn't know you as well back then. Like I knew you as a famous person, like a famous Catholic, but not as a friend when you were writing this, So I was like, oh, look, Kathryn Whitaker, she's making the news. Good for her. I totally forgot that this was a thing that happened to you.
It was insane. I mean, I've never had that many messages in my inbox. People were texting me and calling me, Kathryn, did you see this? And I'm like, no, I saw it. I saw the text. I saw the tweet from Johnny. Don't worry. And so it was this really beautiful moment for our family because Will idolized the Aggies, and to have the player that he loved at that time recognize that this was a moment. I mean, it was such a big deal. And so I always remember that 30-second interaction with Johnny. And I think everybody has good and everybody has dark inside them. And I think I always believed that Johnny would be able to get it together. And so watching him sort of spiral down from the media standpoint, and then after watching the documentary, I mean, the mom in me really felt deeply for his parents of how difficult it must have been to watch their son completely destroy everything that he had created, and sort of how we all did it to him. The university did it to him, the coaching staff, like everyone, it just snowballed, right? So he definitely had a part in it, but so many other people rode the Johnny train too. I mean, I was one of them. People started reading my blog that had never read it before. It opened doors for me that, I never thought it could, but really it was the interaction that he had with my son. And coincidentally, when he won, or when he was installed into the Hall of Fame at A&M, our oldest was a Ross volunteer. They're like the honor guard for the governor of Texas, and they did the saber arch when he walked in. So it was sort of a full circle. So Will's in the documentary. It's kind of fun at the very beginning.
Oh,
You see
cool.
the Ross volunteers, and he was like, "Yeah, my debut on national TV." But so it was a full circle moment for us. So I don't want to discount the really terrible choices that Johnny made, but there's a part of me, Taylor, and I think it's the mom in me that wants to believe that he can redeem himself. And I don't know what that's going to look like long term, but I've always been a fan. I know you're not, but
I'm
anyway,
not. I'm
that's
not.
my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I'm not a fan, and I think it's going to lead to a pretty good conversation about people that make mistakes. Because, as you know, literally all of us are sinners. I've done some bad things in my past. I don't know if I've gone as far as Johnny Football has, but
Yeah.
so just for context, just because whenever Johnny was here at A&M, like I live here now, I live 10 minutes away from the football stadium, and but I'm currently like I'm an Aggie outsider. Like we've lived here for 8 years, so it's like I'll root for them just because they're here. But it's like I'm not part of the team. What's cool is like when there's a fandom of something. We've talked about this before. Like the fandom of the Aggies is really cool. Like going to a game as an
Yeah.
outsider and being brought into something is really cool. And I think as you and I are maybe years ago talked about. I think it was when I went to my first Aggie game and you came on as a guest.
Yeah.
This was before even your co-hosting days. It was your tryout, and we had a great conversation about how like the church needs to be more welcoming to its traditions,
Yes.
like Aggie football is welcoming to me, an outsider, for its traditions. But because I'm an outsider, I don't have this this like love for Johnny, and I don't have this like deep embedded love for the Aggies, because even now I'm still an outsider. But back then I didn't even live here for the beginning of him playing, right? So he did a bunch of stuff. I know I'm more of a pro fan, so like I know of like his complete and utter failure in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like he was
It's
a
terrible.
absolute rock star in college football. Like there's not like Tim Tebow, Cam Newton, him. Like there's a like Reggie Bush. Like there's a high echelon of like greatest college football players ever, and he's in that group. But anyway, okay. So just in college, I know some of the pro stuff, but in college, like what were some of the things that he was getting in trouble for, just for people who have no context of what's going on?
Yeah, so I mean, he was going out and he was drinking. There were some games that he played incredibly hungover and would have like the best game of his life. They were having to pull him out of frat parties. He was getting into, fist fights and things that most college students, well, not most, some college students drink, get into fights, do all that kind of stuff. Johnny's day job, though, meant that he needed to be at practice, he needed to go to class. And after we won against Alabama, the mob got so bad that he had to start taking classes online. And as Cliff Kingsbury, the quarterback coach, says in the documentary, that was sort of the beginning of the end, in the sense that that was the last thing that Johnny needed, was to be in an online environment. And this was pre-COVID, to be in an online environment and not have accountability. So he had the support system within the team and the coaching staff, but he was making terrible off-field decisions. And normally those would translate into terrible decisions on the field. But Johnny was such a good football player that he was still delivering on Saturdays. And so you had this like, well, I mean, should we? And he was the four-string quarterback was taking all of his drug tests for him, and everybody just kind of turned a blind eye because we needed him to play on Saturday. Of course, we don't find out about that until years later, but those were some of the things that he was doing that was not that was not a good wasn't a good path, really,
Right.
for anybody, but particularly for him, especially in such a high profile role that he had in the team and at the university level.
Yeah, so like one of the biggest like sports podcasters in the world, radio show host, TV host is Colin Cowherd, and he talks a lot about how like he doesn't like like people make mistakes, especially people who are the most popular person from their high school, the most athletic person from the high school, like the coolest kids, like they're gonna get in trouble with drinking or drugs or doing stupid things every now and then. And he says all the time when it comes to like the NFL draft, because obviously since Johnny was good in college, he was gonna be in the draft and go to the NFL. And he's like, I don't care if my defensive end gets a DUI. I don't care. Like I don't care as much if like my cornerback gets caught with some weed in his pocket or whatever. But he's like, if my quarterback does, I'm just out. He's just out, right? Because quarterbacks, they are the leader of the team by default because it's the most important position in the sport. They're like people look to them as the leader of the team, and so like if they're doing it, like he's just out on them. And I totally get that sentiment because it's like we have a track record of. If you're a good person and a good leader, like the nerdiest, most Christian people in the NFL tend to be quarterbacks because it's like they're bland. Like, you know, like Kirk Cousins, who was just in a documentary about football this summer too. He's the most boring Christian nerd you've ever seen in your life, and he's been in the league for 14 years, throwing 5,000 yards a season because he's just he's steady, right? And like that's what people want. So I remember a lot of the draft coverage, like going for Johnny, and everybody's saying like, okay, he's a great player. He's also, I'm exaggerating a little, but not too much. He's also 5'1" and 114 pounds. Like he's a small kid. He's not incredibly athletic when it comes to like the NFL, right? So there was this for me. It was like the thing that really made me not like Johnny was a lack of self-awareness. So like in college, it was him not being aware that he's the leader, that he has held to a higher standard, that he needs to be better, and ultimately, like if he wants to have a future and a profitable future, stop being an idiot. You know, it's like I was already kind of irked about it, but then you know, like one of his nicknames was Money Manziel, right? And like you know, we find out in the documentary this thing that we were all fed this lie that his parents were oil tycoons, and that's why he didn't care about money. He didn't need. They were poor. Like we found that out in the documentary. They were poor. He was getting all this money under the table, which now is legal, but wasn't then. Like it's this whole thing. So the irony of like I didn't like the money sign at the beginning when he was in college when they didn't make money, and then he's doing the money sign when like it was just Aggie boosters.
Well, and it was all pre-NIL, but I think it begs the question of who was looking out for Johnny. The university wasn't looking out for Johnny. The coaching staff wasn't. His friends weren't. You know, it's easy to get caught up, and I think that the Christianity angle is that it's easy to get sucked in to the glamour and the flash of like I'm amazing player. I'm getting all this coverage. Like all these things are happening so fast and furious. And then you throw, a dose of social media in there. And and I'm like, but who, Scott and I, my husband and I talked about this. I was like, so let's play this out. No other player skyrocketed that fast, that quickly, that young in a program that was entering a major. I mean, SEC is a powerhouse in football. And it all happened so fast, and it was like there was no rubric, like, we've never done this before, so what did we expect to happen? Of course he's gonna crash and burn. Of course everyone is gonna ride the Johnny train and profit from it. The university raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Maybe it wasn't necessarily because of Johnny, but because of this shift in people started believing, "Hey, this place might be really amazing," and
they
the rest of the
renovated
world
the
starting to
stadium
figure it out.
because of Johnny's success. Like it
400,
worked.
300, $400 million stadium, like they imploded it right after he left, and we have this brand spanking new stadium. So everybody stood to profit from Johnny except Johnny. And I think that was the most difficult part to watch about that documentary, that he's a real human being, a real person. And I was really struck by what his sister said is people were like, what's Johnny doing now? I think he seems to be in a better place. But his sister said, people were asking, what's he doing now? And she said, Johnny's not doing anything right now. He's not in a space. And I think we would say he's not had a lot of time to reconcile and really spend time in discernment and prayer about what is next, because to do that you have to be in a healthy place, and I think he's getting there, and I was grateful to see that. But it was so hard for me to watch because I was like, how did we as a community, Aggies that like really believe strongly in community and camaraderie. Like, how did we fail him? And as a church, like, how are we continuing to fail people that need us most? And so it really did stir a lot in me that I felt a new, I guess, an empathy and an awareness of what really happened to him, and like what role did we all play in that? And what role do we play in that and other people in our lives currently? Like, are we allowing other people to self destruct because we're not giving them the support that they need? Or we're throwing so much goodness at them that we're like, you're so amazing, and there's no accountability. So, from that perspective, it gave me a lot to think about. It was a good discussion at our dinner table. But I still believe, and maybe it's just because of that one really beautiful interaction that he had with Will, that I still believe that he really can get it together. And I think that if Johnny takes the time to do some deep introspection, Taylor, I believe that he can be a real beacon of hope for other young men who perhaps go really high really fast in sports, and perhaps they can make different decisions because of his example. I believe he has the potential to do that down the road. So I don't know what'll happen to him.
There's like 5 different directions I want to go from what we've been talking about. And
I know,
like,
sorry.
no, it's not. It's a good thing because I'm like, this might end up being the whole show because there's so much I want to talk about here. And one of them being, it's interesting to me because I'm hearing you talk as an insider in both scenarios. I'm an outsider in both scenarios. I was an outsider when he was good, and I'm still an outsider whenever he fell apart. You were an insider for both, which we talked about at the beginning. It's like you loved and cared for him. I did not, because you're an insider. I'm an outsider. But you also care for him and are like, you feel like it was your fault that he made the decisions, or like you being
Right.
part of the
Collectively,
Aggie,
all of us.
the Aggie community, right? When as the outsider, I'm like, I don't care about that. He made those decisions. It's on him. You even said he didn't profit from it. He profited mightily from it. You're like, everybody else profited. So did he. He made millions of dollars in college, and he made millions of dollars in the pros because of all of this, right? Like, maybe it wasn't good for his mental health and his decision making, but like, he literally profited just like everybody else did, right? But then, so ultimately, I don't like Johnny. I never liked Johnny. I thought it was a fun story whenever he was fun, but like, immediately I saw he's too cocky. He's a jerk. He doesn't know how to handle himself. So like, as a sports person, I'm like, you're talking about your kids having good interactions. I was like, I don't want him to be a role model for the kids that I work with. I don't want him to be a role model for my kids. I don't want him to be a role model for my track kids. Like, I was working in sports in town while Johnny was like, I wasn't here for the beginning of his career. I was here for the end of his career here at A&M. It's like, I'm coaching these kids and they're looking up to him. I'm like, why? He's a terrible person. Don't try to be like Johnny, right? And then he goes to the NFL, and like, if I'm being honest, it was kind of fun for me to watch him fall apart in the NFL because it like proved my point that I'm like, he's not a role model. He's not a good teammate. He's not a good athlete. Like, he thought, it was all about, like I mentioned earlier, but like this self-awareness. He lacked self-awareness in his abilities because he thought he could run around like he could when he was in college. But like, he was super tiny white guy, and there's a 400-pound 6'6" black guy running a 4.4 chasing him, and he thought he was faster than him. Like, just no self-awareness. He talked crap about his coaching staff. He talked crap about his teammates. He came into a perfect team. All they needed was a quarterback in the NFL, and he imploded it himself. Like, they were ready-made. Like, he got OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., who's a great college player, made probably the most famous catch in the NFL ever, made him leave because he talked crap about him and his dad. What a jerk. He talked crap about like one of the running backs that was on the verge of being cut. He talked crap about him, and then the guy got cut. Like, I just do not like him, and I was happy to see him crash and burn because I felt like it's what he deserved. Now, that's a very different place than where you are. And essentially, we're going to transition to a story here in a little bit about another athlete that I felt the exact same way about, that a lot of people loved. And I had a very funny moment about that. But before we get there, one, I want to let you respond to what I just said. Two, what was like the main gist of the contents of that open letter that you sent?
So what I really said was that 30 seconds, sometimes we dismiss, like it's a red light, it's a couple of downs in a football game. 30 seconds goes by pretty fast in our life. And I said, but the 30 seconds that Johnny spent with my son, he's going to remember for the rest of his life. So sometimes we minimize our interaction with people in a situation thinking, oh, we just have a small amount of time and our impact is not going to be very big. And that moment, that 30 seconds that he spent with our oldest son made me recognize, there are moments that was just one of many moments that Johnny had had with multiple kids, fans, whoever, but that 30 seconds meant a lot to our family. And so I was grateful that I was going to be able to carry that with us and that it was a reminder that it's not the amount of time that you spend with someone, but like how intentional and how purposeful and how present are you to someone, whether it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes. So that was the gist of the letter. It was an open letter to say thank you basically for being present to my son in that short amount of time. But I do want to respond to the part, Taylor, because I don't disagree with you, and I don't think Johnny would disagree with you and say, "Man, I literally made every bad choice." And he even says it in the documentary, like, "I was planning on killing myself. I was planning, like, I was self-destructing. I was spending all my money. I didn't care anymore. Nothing was fun anymore." Like, it all the joy of what he had in collegiate athletics evaporated. And did he play a major role in that? 100%, and he will tell you that he did. I think the sadder part, though, is that when we root against people and not for people, and I think it's easy to get frustrated or to look at someone and be like, "Well, you deserved it." Like, I can look at my kids, like, they don't take the papers in that they're supposed to that I signed to school, and then they can't do the extracurricular activity. There's a part of me that wants to be like, "Well, I told you so." But the mom in me is like, okay, so what was the lesson that we learned from this? You really wanted this thing and you didn't do this, and this was the consequence. We always try to let the consequence teach the lesson instead of us. And so I feel like the consequences taught Johnny the lesson. And there were many, they were harsh and they were extreme. And the choices that he made, no one will disagree, even him, that they were horrible, atrocious, that he was a leader and he had an opportunity to influence children and fans positively, and he blew it. But I think that our Christian faith reminds us that if Jesus can be merciful even to the sinner hanging next to him on the cross, that we should root for people and not against them. And I think now that we're in this new phase, that Johnny's in the season of a little bit more self awareness, a lot more self discovery, taking some time to get it together. I'm rooting for him because I want there to be the redemption story at the end to say, like, we are humans and we all muck it up. And his just happened to be public, right? There are plenty of people maybe listening to this and they're like, you know what? I've made similar choices and it just wasn't on national TV and pundits weren't talking about it and there wasn't a documentary about it. But our hope is that the redemption is always going to come. And I think that's the story that I'm really anxious to see how it turns out. I'm rooting for him because I believe that people have the ability to change. And what a magnificent story that would be. To the ability to say, "Man, I was at the bottom of the barrel, and here I am." So, the bottom line is that I think that watching that documentary gave me a lot to ponder and the hope that maybe we all need to extend other people forgiveness. We need to hold people accountable for the bad choices that they make, and that we should be rooting for people, not against them. And I think that it's just how it all ended to me was incredibly tragic because it could have gone so well and instead it went so wrong.
Our friends over at the Catholic Man Show have a message they'd like for you to hear today. They've partnered with the Catholic Customs Company, who built Sister Wilhelmina's Shrine. That sounds like one of Chris Bartlett's kids. Sister Wilhelmina, for an epic giveaway. It is important to have a place to pray in your home. That's why they're giving away a free custom home altar by Catholic Customs Company to sanctify your home. This home altar is over $1,700 in value, and they'll also pay the shipping costs to get the altar to your home. The second place winner will also receive a 5-volume hardback set of the Summa Theologica, which weighs approximately 18 billion pounds. Not a bad second place prize. The giveaway ends on September 14th. You can enter the giveaway in 10 different ways. All you need to do is go to thecatholicmanshow.com/home altar. That's thecatholicmanshow.com/home altar. The link is in the description here of the show for your chance to win this beautiful home altar. Again, that is not Chris Bartlett's child, but sounds like it. Sister Wilhelmina's Shrine. You can win it. It's almost $2,000 in value, and you can win it for free. Again, go to thecatholicmanshow.com/home altar for your chance to win this almost $2,000 worth of prizes. The rooting thing is a part of sports, right? So like in the Christian life, we should be rooting for the other people. Like I guess ultimately I would love for him to have a redemption story. And it actually plays into one of the reasons that I didn't like him. One of the reasons I didn't like him is because I was in town and seeing how his bad example was influencing the young people at the school that I worked with, right? They all wanted to be him. And if we're being honest, a lot of them kind of acted like him in college. And it's like he was, you know, a surrogate for or a replacement for God, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to be like God. I want to be like Johnny Football. Everybody loves Johnny Football. He's cool. They killed God. They you know, like, so like there is this like the sports fan in me and the Christian in me kind of going against each other because it's like. Mm-hmm. I do root against people that I don't like in sports. And
I'm with you. I didn't love, it caused a lot of conversations at our dinner table. I did not want my boys emulating that behavior either. I was like, so we need to separate the football player that you love, he was so much fun to watch. And I said, I don't want you to lose that love, but you are going to be in major trouble in my house if you pull some of the stunts that he pulled off the field. Like that is unacceptable. So yeah, there was a lot of discussions at our, I just washed, we have a Johnny Football shirt that my 8th grader was wearing the other day, and I just watched it and I just hung it up just before we started recording.
That's so funny.
And it just the irony, but my boys wear those shirts every week.
So here's my question for you. I've looked pretty bad in this conversation. I have a question for you in regards to rooting. Do you wish the best for every UT Longhorn football player?
Absolutely not.
Do you wish they're good? Do you wish do you wish for them to have great redemption? See, okay, that makes me feel a little better about myself. But there is this interesting thing because like I've had a similar conversation like this before where I ended up looking like the bad guy. In regards to like, yes, I agree with you in the point that I hope that Johnny has a redemption arc, kind of because I want the kids that looked up to him to see that everything that he did, that he admits the mistakes, that they were wrong, and that he wishes things went differently. And like, honestly, even them hearing that like he was suicidal at the point where it looked like everything was going perfectly for him, like those are all good conversations for those young people that are in my mind who idolize this guy to hear. But I think it'd also be great for them to hear this redemption story, right? So similar story with another athlete that I hated. An athlete that I hated because of how he acted on the court, because of the kind of teammate that he was, because of the kind of the leader that he wasn't. Pretty great basketball player, one by the name of Kobe Bryant, who actually, as we record this today, it is Mamba Day today. This is going out next week, but we are recording on 8/24. The 2 numbers that he had in his career. Why did he change his numbers? Because he had a big scandal and he didn't want to be associated with the number anymore. But the reason that he has 2 numbers is because he made mistakes, but also like we are recording this on August 24th, 8/24. It's Mamba Day, where we remember his passing 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was, right? The morning that he passed away, I'm giving away the big lead. I said everything I'm about to tell you to the group of these boys, the same boys that we're talking about, the same boys that idolized Johnny Manziel, who, we're kind of at the tail end. They're a little bit younger than they weren't seniors when Johnny was, like those were the kids that got into drinking and drugs that probably shouldn't have. These kids were kind of the good kids, but kind of at the tail end of like still idolized him, still kind of acted like him on the field, on the court, whatever. And it annoyed me. And I'm talking to them about, I'm trying to instill in these young kids. We were talking about life choices and the importance of avoiding sin and avoiding mistakes, which is like a big part of the Christian life, right? And I was literally telling them, because they all love Kobe, and it was kind of this whole thing, everybody, whenever they shoot a piece of trash into the trash can, what do they yell? Kobe, so they were doing that. So like we were talking about forgiveness, and they kind of challenged me on this because they're like, Taylor, I thought you're supposed to be a good Catholic. Why aren't you loving Kobe Bryant? Why aren't you forgiving Kobe Bryant? And I was like, okay, there's some nuance here, right? Where it's like, I hated Kobe.
Yes.
I hated how he played on the court. And then I was, again, kind of like with Johnny, I was kind of vindicated because it was kind of the I was right thing. He had the huge, big cheating scandal, and
It's horrible.
the sanctity of marriage, the sanctity of the other people. Like he's just not a person that I don't look up to. And it was one of those similar things with Johnny where it's like everybody else loved him, and I felt like I was the only person seeing it. I'm like, why do you all love this guy? He's a terrible person, But everybody's idolizing. So it made me like even firmer in the I don't like this person camp because everybody else loved him, right? But then, by the time we're having this conversation 3-4 years ago, what I always forget.
3.5. It was January of 2020.
Was it? Okay. So January of 2020. So that was, 3.5 years. You're right. Okay. So
aren't you impressed that I know the date?
I am impressed. Okay. Very good Googling. That was great.
I didn't even Google it.
I was looking up for a little while. Maybe I was thinking. When I think I look up because I think that my thoughts are up there for some reason. But that's the date that we were having this conversation. Essentially the point that I was trying to get across is, yes, as Catholics, we should forgive people. We should move on. But I was like, if you make mistakes, people are going to remember them. And I was trying to get them to like not have sex before they're married. Like they're going off to college. I'm preparing these kids to go off. I'm like, don't have sex. Don't drink and drive. Don't drink. I know you're probably going to, but at least be safe about it. Don't do drugs. Don't be a jerk to your teammates like Kobe and John. I'm like, so I'm essentially saying, but they're like, oh, but like he's retired now and life has slowed down, like in a similar place where Johnny kind of is now. A little bit more introspective and like he's, at this point he had made up with his wife and he was being a good father and he was going to mass, like all these stories that were coming out that like he's going to mass and he's going to confession. I'm like, that's great. I'm happy for him and I'm proud that he is doing those things. But you know what I'm never going to be? I am never going to be a fan of Kobe Bryant. Never. He's done too much. I'm happy that he's forgiven. I'm happy that God has forgiven him. I'm happy that he's doing better, but I'm never going to put him as a beacon of to look up to. And like, if he was if he had been a friend of mine, he would no longer be a friend of mine. Like, that's not the kind of person that I want to be friends with. I can forgive him, but I'm telling him I'm moving on, right? So I'm telling these kids, It's like, look, you can make mistakes and God will forgive you, but that doesn't mean that people will. And even if people do forgive you, it doesn't mean that like you might break relationships, right? And that's the point that I was making. And then an hour later, he dies and I'm getting text messages like, they literally said, I killed Kobe. Like, because you talked about, they're like, you're speaking ill of the dead. I was like, he wasn't dead then. Like, I don't know.
Right. But the point is that when you make bad choices, yes, they affect you, but you wound other people.
Yeah.
And I think as I watched that documentary, the laundry list of people that were wounded because he was, insecure, immature, all the things. It was hard to watch, Taylor. And so I'm not sitting here trying to convince you that you should love Johnny. I think that we all need people to love us in our life, but I also recognize that sometimes the wounds that people inflict upon you are deep and they are wide. And it is okay to look at them and forgive them for the choices that they made. And then for you to put up a healthy boundary and say, but I can no longer be your friend. I can no longer, be in your inner and I think you saw that in the documentary that some of his friends were like, listen, we have moved to a new place, but we can no longer be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that's the harsh reality is that you can get your redemption story, but you cannot unwound people that you wound. It's not possible. You can reconcile, you can move forward, but that's real pain that was really inflicted on real people. And it was a reminder to me to think about where are the places in my life that I have, and we've all done it. Where have I wounded someone? And is it fixable? Can we move in a better place, or do I need to forgive and move forward? And I think that's a question all of us have to ask ourselves.
I like that. And I like that we started off in very different camps and I think we ended in a very similar one, which is good. I'm glad we did that.
Yeah.
It's this idea that like our choices, our sins, our mistakes can be forgiven, but they still have consequences, right? Like,
of course they do.
They still have consequences. They still affect the body of Christ. And there's something about tribes, right? So like fandom of a sports team or fandom of whatever. Like we have our little tribes. Like we have our family and kind of our neighbors and our neighborhood, our church, we have all these little tribes that we're in. And it is like when people make mistakes like this, like with Johnny, like you are part of the tribe. You're part of the Aggie tribe. You have these interactions with them. You like your kids have these, like you are part of the tribe. So it makes sense that like you as a like practicing Catholic, that somebody who's holy and trying to do the right thing, that you as part of the tribe are like, look, yes, I'm admitting that he's wrong, but like I still want what's best for him, and like if I could help with that, that'd be great. And then there's another person who less of a good Catholic, but still trying, who's like, but I'm not part of the tribe though. There's something to that of like, yes, would I ultimately like him to have a redemption arc, if for him to get his life together, for him to have a great relationship with God and like be an ambassador for the Aggies, be an ambassador for God, be an ambassador for redemption, be an ambassador for like don't make decisions like this in college. I would love that, right? But I honestly don't care either way. I'm just not part of the tribe, right? I hadn't thought about Johnny Manziel since he left the NFL. I just haven't thought about him once because I'm just like he was like the Icarus story. He got so close to the sun and he burned, and he's like that's a story that is a lesson. Yeah, don't like literally like you said I forget your exact wording, but you use fire, a fire symbolism. Like he burned so hot, like so quickly, right? It's literally Icarus, right? And that is a cautionary tale for people to see. Ultimately, I it would be great for him, but I just don't care as much as you do because I'm not part of the tribe, right? So there is something of like if we have family members that do things that are wrong, it's like there's got to be a little bit more forgiveness and like moving forward. Like like you have these feelings of motherhood. I don't have feelings of motherhood. What he feels like to me is the quarterback of the opposing team. Like I hope I hope he loses. That's fair. But like when it comes to like my kids and like my wife, my kids, like my parents, my sisters, my extended family, and then like especially like literally these kids that I coach have been in my mind this entire time because anytime I think about sports and role models, that's who I'm thinking about, right? It's like if they make mistakes, I'm a lot more forgiving of them than I am of somebody, a quarterback for a team that I didn't really care about. So.
But I mean, isn't that the lesson, Taylor, is that in order for us to affect change, we have to be in relationship with people. So it's super easy for me to look at people like Kobe Bryant or Johnny Manziel. I'm not in relationship with them, right? Like I'm not a close friend. I'm not a family member. And I think we often look at other people and make judgments about the choices that they make. Yes, he has influence and all those sorts of things. But what I'm talking about is we often build these narratives around people that we don't know well. And I'm like, but do you know the full story? Like that documentary gave us some of the story, but I don't know the full story. I'm not in relationship with Johnny, but I am in relationship with my children. And so I can help affect change in their lives, much like all of us. I think it's a real call for us to be careful in the people in which we choose to lay judgment upon because we don't know the full story. And so I think that's where we have to root for people and whether we're in their camp or not. But I think that's when you have to take a long, hard look at the real people that you have a real relationship with in your life and say, am I being the kind of friend, the kind of family member that God is calling me to be? And if I'm not, then I either need to address something within myself or I need to be a better advocate for whoever that may be in my life. So I think it's a reminder to be in relationship with people and to be really present to them because we can affect change with those people that then affect the world. And so my hope is that the people that he is in relationship with are doing that for him.
I hope so too. And it's interesting that you bring it there because like that's something that I've been dealing with in my own mind for a while. Like I thought being a Christian 10 years ago, I thought being a Christian meant that I had to forgive everyone and stay in relationship with everyone that hurt me or hurt somebody I cared about. Right.
Nope.
So that was a big that was a big like epiphany for me of like, no, I can forgive you even if it's hard. Sure. And like, that's where I came up with the whole, like, the whole 70 times 7 thing. Like I'm on forgiveness number 302. Like I'm still not quite there yet. Like I'm still working through the process, but there are people that I have completely 100% cut out of my life. And it has been great. It's been good for me. It's been good for my family. It's been good for my faith. It's been like, it was the right choice. There are other people though. And this, like, that's not the part I'm struggling with. It's not the people that I've completely cut out. It's the people there have been some people that I have been close to in my past that have been popping up a lot in my mind recently where I'm having to discern and decide, are these people where it would be healthier for me to just completely cut out, or have I been a bad friend? Do I need to reconcile? Do I need to do these sorts of things? Right. So that's an interesting discernment with two valid choices. I mean, I'm sure there's a plethora amongst the two, but essentially, ultimately, it's like, do I stop having a relationship with them, or do I try to rebuild a relationship? Right. So it's this interesting tribe thing of like, they used to be in my tribe, and then something happened, and there are multiple things happened, and they are no longer in my tribe. But there are some people. I'm not talking about the people I've completely cut out. There's a good thing. I'm talking about the people that are kind of on the fringes of like,
sure.
Am I being a jerk? So like that's part of the Christian life is yes, forgiveness, but also deciding who's going to be part of my tribe, who's going to still be part of my life. I can forgive them from afar, or I can forgive them up close. Either way, I'm forgiving them. But making that decision has been interesting lately.
Well, and I think we have to be willing. Reconciliation is hard, particularly, and I think in that spot, Taylor, that you're talking about, where it's not the black or the white, it's the gray part, right? And you're like, I think it's a real call to all of us, and I'm including myself in this because I'm thinking of a certain relationship that, like, am I doing my part to reconcile, and am I making a choice based on love and not of pride? Like, am I really coming from a place of real thoughtfulness, real discernment, deep prayer, a lot of reflection and love? Or am I just feel like I just need to make a point, And so do I need to do deep heart work, or do they? And that takes time. And I think we sometimes rush through that because we either want to cut them out or move forward, when really we need to address the elephant in the room, so to speak, before we can go one way or the other. And that's hard, Taylor. Nobody wants to
Are you
do
talking
that.
about me? Am I the person in that example?
You're the problem. No, it's not you.
So we're gonna close with this. We meant to do 3 whole topics today, like we normally do. I think this might be our first ever like 1 segment show ever. So we're like, last episode that you
and
were
I was on your turf, Taylor. We talked all about sports.
We did, and we were on different sides of it. It was very, very fun. But I jokingly said, "Are you talking about me?" Because I do think that I mentioned this earlier, kind of as a setup for this point that I thought was going to be a different segment. We're just going to close with this. You and I's friendship reached a new level yesterday afternoon at 2:23 in the afternoon. Do you remember what you said to me at yesterday afternoon at 2:23?
Yes, I told you to shut up.
You sure did. Which is I said
I can hear you laughing. Yeah,
because here's what you sent me. You asked me we work on editing stuff together. Like I edit multiple of your shows. You're on this show. Like I'm editing you a lot, right? You texted me, hey, if I'm recording in Audacity, which is this recording software, do I export to a WAV or an MP3? And I said, WAV. And then you said Sable, Sable. And then you immediately sent me what I read first as dank, and then you said hashtag, I don't know if you want me to...
So say it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
You said hashtag damn you autocorrect. Which I was like, I laughed and I said neither made sense because I was like, why are you saying dank? That's a word from like 28 years ago, like the last time you were cool,
Danke is like thank you in German.
And then I finally realized that you were using a different language, which is why your autocorrect said sable, which is very funny. And then you said, shut up, I can hear you laughing. And we reached a new moment because I was 100% sitting right here at this computer laughing at you. You said shut up to me, which I don't let people outside of my tribe tell me to shut up. So it was just very funny thing where if somebody else tells me to shut up, if it's a guy, I'm punching them. If it's a woman, I'm probably yelling at them. But you said it, and you know what I did? I laughed immediately. You're in the tribe.
Ooh, I can stay.
It was very funny. So I'm happy that you and I's friendship took the next level. I hope the best for Johnny Football. I hope that he becomes a beacon of light and hope because he let himself into darkness. I might have taken some people with him. So I hope that there's some redemption there. And I think in regards to redemption, you redeemed yourself today. You looked like the worst sports person ever last month. And now you look like a very, very good sports person. I'm proud of you.
See, don't judge people, Taylor. People can change, man.
All right. Well, that is... go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when we talk about Aggie football, I actually do know what I'm talking about. So.
And this is... that might be the one topic where you know more about the sport than I do, because I don't care about Aggie college football. I just don't.
That's awesome. Awesome.
All right. Well, that's our one segment show. I hope that you enjoyed it. I'm Taylor Schroll. I'll be back next week. That's Kathryn Whitaker. She'll be back in a month. See ya. Thank y'all for listening today. We hope that you enjoyed our very rare one-segment show. I mean, it was still a full-length show because we talked forever, but I really enjoyed that conversation with Kathryn. I hope that you did too. If you did, please hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening, especially if you're watching on YouTube. We got a bunch of stuff going on YouTube these days. We've got not only this show every single week, we've got our Catholic Foundation series that can help you brush up on your Catholic knowledge. It's a 10-week course on Catholicism, free right there on youtube.com/Forte Catholic. We've also got our Catholic Perspective series where we look at some of our favorite movies and TV shows, books, that sort of thing. We've also got talks and music and all sorts of stuff, all on youtube.com/Forte Catholic. We hope that you enjoy it. But until next time, love you.